today is here to talk about the critical mindset shift, and Jeff's going to help us rethink how to keep the momentum as well. So, Jeff, over to you. Feel free to introduce yourself briefly as well. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, hey everyone. Excited to be here. Have joined many of these calls as a searcher, so kind of fun to come back around and kind of put my searcher hat back on and hopefully share some lessons learned. I put together a couple slides just on kind of the context of the deal that I did. Let me pull that up. You guys able to see that? Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I guess as I go through this, feel free to either drop questions in the chat or just come off mute and kind of conversationally jump in. Planning to have it be mostly just me kind of going through some of these lessons learned, but hopefully it can be conversational, and I'll make sure to leave time at the end specifically for questions. So the topics that I'm going to cover in order here, and starting with velocity with LOIs and how that can be helpful. I'm going to explain why I chose to go with the software services business instead of maybe a more traditional ETA business, maybe in the trades. Kind of the thinking I went through acquiring a remote business versus something local where I live here in the Portland area. And then kind of talking through how everything involved in this process really is closely related to sales and kind of getting comfortable there. And then just kind of the closing it out with the kind of emotional side or emotional burden of kind of going through the ETA and acquisition process and thoughts there. But before I get into those lessons learned from my search, just to give you a little bit idea of the company that I bought was a boutique software services firm called DTG, and services are really in custom data and cloud engineering, system integration. So, if a client has a CRM and an ERP and a collaboration software and a custom database, tying all that data together, custom app development. We do staff augmentation, so some of our staff will report directly within our client's infrastructure. And in terms of kind of size and location, we started in Buffalo in 2012, but went remote during COVID. 25 to 30 employees. I think it was around maybe 27 when I bought it. Those folks are spread across quite a few states. And there were two owners kind of in their mid 50s or maybe early 50s that one, was just ready to be completely done and move on. And then the other wanted to stay on, which was both good, had some pros and cons to that. And then let's see if I click over here. Okay, yeah. And so just to give you a sense for what I was looking at when I was using my kind of Acquira spreadsheet here, the price that I went in with my LOI at was around 3.4. It was a bit high, maybe it was 3.6, and then we ended up renegotiating it down to 3.4. Had some costs to close on the business and quality of earnings and legal. If we get into the Q&A, I feel like I had a pretty solid deal team. So if folks are curious, who I used, the company that I used for the QOE was out of Canada, so it was actually a bit cheaper to go that route. I was initially looking at getting a working capital from the bank, but it ended up making more sense to do a line of credit so that I didn't have to pay interest on the working capital. I could just tap it when I needed it. And then I did negotiate $375 working capital left in the business from the sellers, and that was kind of purely based on advice I had been given, and people saying working capital is important. I'd never run a business, never really looked at a balance sheet or any sort of business financials. My background is more in tech sales and marketing and actually becoming a software developer. So really knew nothing about the business side, but now that I own the business and am running, running it and kind of understand how a cash conversion cycle works and can feel that, I will reiterate that working capital is critical and potentially, I'm not going to say often overlooked, but can be overlooked. So yeah, certainly something to keep in mind. Business model will be somewhat dependent on how important that is, but we're a very people-heavy business. The acquiring it was almost entirely just goodwill. There's really no assets, a few laptops. So, but we have to pay employees for the month, huge payroll, and then net 30 on the invoices. So it can take a while to about 50 days or so to get that cash back. So anyway, working capital is important. The kind of SDE that I had estimated was kind of I worked closely with the seller after getting through the LOI process to look at kind of what was in the pipe and what we thought was going to close. We kind of landed on this projected number, and it did turn out to be pretty close to that. The trailing 12 months of the QOE was actually much lower than their books had been showing because their accounting had been run by a kind of non-accountant founder who was not great at QuickBooks. So that QOE process did help kind of in the negotiation and where it was able to get a bit better price. Yeah, certainly jump in if folks have any questions. I ended up doing a very leveraged acquisition. So I put in 136 on top of, just from savings, on top of, let's see here, some of those closing costs. Some of that was actually rolled into the loan. And then I had a friend who invested $100K in the deal, and there was no step up on that. So it was a good deal for me where I wasn't losing. He basically got the same amount of equity that he put dollars in. So he owns 2.8% of the company shares. Yeah, his let's see here, dad's manufacturing company became a client, so that worked out well and took a bit of pressure off, where I was able to save more of my kind of personal savings for rainy day and growth. But yeah, overall, only put down like 7% of the purchase price in cash. It was a floating interest rate here, 10.75, so it's now down to 9.75.
How'd you put down 5%? Where did the remaining equity? Does the seller note stand by, or?
Great question. Yeah, exactly. Because this seller note that I hadn't quite gotten down here to yet, yeah, that was structured in a way that the SBA looks at that as an equity injection, which kind of defies logic to me a little bit. But yeah, it fully deferred for 2 years, and then 7% interest for the remaining term. So it was over 10 years, but don't owe anything on it for the first 2 years.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they changed that.
Yeah. So because of that, they included that. That got me above that threshold.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of the first year, that was my calculation of how much debt I was going to need to pay, and then goes up a little bit more because there's that seller financing to start paying in years 3 through 10.
Hey Jeff, I have a question about your offer structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you submit your offer structure? Did you base it on a multiple of SDE or EBITDA? And then when you did your quality of earnings, how did you use that to renegotiate the price?
Yeah, I think all the above. So it was a pretty competitive deal in the sense that there were the company that the brokers. It was a bit frustrating from a buyer's perspective because there was no price on the deal, and it was just you had a window of time to put together at least an IOI, if not the LOI, and then they were going to review all the LOIs at once and then choose who they wanted to move forward with. And so a book had been recommended to me by another searcher, and then the name's escaping me, but I can come back to it. But it was basically kind of a negotiation book, and the woman who wrote it had a tactic of kind of always having 3 offers put in there. So I put together like 3 very kind of high level structures of like price, and that changed a little bit with the seller financing component of it. And then the quality of earnings came, and I did kind of. I certainly wrote in the LOI that it was tied to a multiple of SDE, even though the brokers were trying to get people away from that because I think it's better for you as the buyer to have that in there. But
was it never split the difference? Just to stop you, was that the one that I'm thinking of? Maybe.
That sounds familiar.
Okay, the book. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Ben, did you have a question there?
No.
Okay. Anyway, the quality of earnings, I think part of it was due to kind of the difference between cash and accrual counting, and they had some revenue that they had in one year that actually other year kind of on both sides of it. And so for like 2023, some revenue at the beginning of the year got pushed into 22, and some of the revenue at the end of the year got pushed into 23, and so or into 24 rather. So it made 23 a worse year on paper. And so kind of used that to renegotiate a bit further into the process. So this was kind of the estimate I went with for pre-debt cash flow, and it turned out to be pretty close to right. So this was, I almost think of this as adding to the purchase price. So the seller that didn't want to leave, he had in the sim, it said that he wants a $250K salary to stay on for 1 or 2 years. I think it might have said in the sim, but it was nice to have him stay on just because it provided continuity with the clients and the employees, and so negotiated kind of a way for him to stay on, and then over time I was reducing his hours, so it wasn't the full amount. And then just a kind of quick overview of when I was looking at the company, kind of what I perceived as where it sat in terms of every business that I looked at, there's kind of some things you got to compromise on or some unknowns, and so the weaknesses here that are large, or to some degree still true, is the customer concentration bit was scary. Like 2 customers represent half the revenue basically, which was an issue getting the SBA loan, and had to model that out in a way that the business could survive without that top customer. Even though they're the biggest in revenue, because they're large, they have a lower kind of price per hour. Almost all of our work is just time and materials, and so because they have a lower rate, they actually represent less of the company's profit. I guess one of the weaknesses and opportunities that drew me to this was everything had kind of been founder-led sales, so it was basically people that the owners knew or the employees knew, or references from clients. So there was really they hadn't really cracked the outbound sales or digital marketing at all. So that felt like an upside. And then the threat that kind of keeps me up at night is kind of a combination of this intense competition in AI. So if you don't specialize either with a service or an industry in particular, I think the kind of offshore dev shops can be very cheap per hour. So we're kind of continuing to lean into regulated industries and high trust industries like healthcare and financial services, and then continuing to kind of narrow down the services that we provide. And then AI, kind of both a threat and an opportunity, in the sense that some software development's going to continue to get eaten by that, but we're also starting to offer AI related services, like getting all your data infrastructure ready for AI.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So my background's also in software development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marketing. And I looked at businesses like this. Specifically, I looked at one that did like MVPs for businesses, B2B software, right?
Mhm.
And AI, I just could not get past it. So something like your business, especially where it's, and I mean, obviously you're in it, so you tell me, but
Yeah.
it's like, you know, your revenue is per hour, right?
Yep.
So with AI, you're going to be more efficient, therefore you're going to work faster, thus make less money. So
Yeah.
how do you see that as like, does it enable more features?
Mhm.
Like so you can just do more in the same amount of time? Or how do how did you kind of, how do you sleep with that?
Yeah. Well, I have the same thought. So like, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that the over time, I think the business model will need to evolve a bit to either be fixed fee or kind of value-based pricing. But so that yeah, that I'm thinking through that right now, and then there's just a lot of things that need to like, you can use ChatGPT to write emails and do different things, but and agents and whatnot to make life more automated. But if you're going to use it at an enterprise level, there just needs to be a ton of work done on the data side, and organizations are just massive and kind of unorganized in general. So our largest client is a health insurance company, and they just have almost, I mean, not unlimited, but they just have such a backlog of tech debt and various teams and various infrastructure that need to be tied together. So I think for companies to take advantage of AI, they really need to get their data in order, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But I do agree that long term, time and materials will need to either be augmented by more work. If a company has a budget, we can do more with less time, or just fix fee it.
That's what I was wondering that too, where it's kind of like in my mind, the human, just because something takes 3 months instead of like, there's always a list. There's always more features, more this, more, and you could just probably build a better, more feature-rich something, and then eventually increase rates to compensate
Yep.
for the efficiency of, how fast you can deliver. I'm sure, there's
Mhm.
other ways. Okay, I was
Yeah.
just curious how
Yeah.
you thought of it, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess looking at the strengths, I mean, something that I was planning to talk about a bit more on the other topics was, I guess, getting comfortable with ambiguity. I mean, you really don't have a ton of, you have some information, but you can't talk to employees or clients when you're buying a company in general. And so, at least for me, some kind of proxy metrics for health of the business were the tenure of the employees and tenure of the clients. So, the fact that, multiple employees have been there for 10 years, kind of speaks to the culture and people liking the job enough to stay there for a long time. And then, yeah, similar with the clients, clients have been on for 4, 5, 6 years and done multiple projects. The quality of service has to be good enough for those clients to come back. But still, obviously, somewhat of a leap of faith to acquire a business where you've never actually spoken to any employees or clients.
Did you in your diligence or maybe did you ever ask to speak with any of the like employees, and did they have any, I mean, I guess if the one guy was staying on, that's not as crucial. I suppose it kind of helps you out a lot.
Yeah, I did, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to tell anyone. I can see why you wouldn't want to, and if there were certain, I'm sure there are situations in which people are able to do this, and certainly in larger deals, like I think executive teams, and there are people that get pulled into these sort of situations where some employees do know, but at least with a company this size and I think this is pretty true with everyone I talked with. They were very almost paranoid about any employees finding out, and then whatever risk that might cause with people leaving and all these questions coming up, and nothing's really for sure until the deal closes. So yeah, they were hoping to avoid that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always wonder how to approach that on my end, right? I mean, I've been under LOI twice, and both times, it hasn't gotten there, but I always had the provision of, oh, we get to speak with XYZ key employees, right?
Yep.
And it's died
Yeah.
before then, before like final loan approval.
Yep.
I can see, but okay, they don't want to tell anybody because what if they leave? Well, yeah, what if they leave?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what if they leave? Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
It's like if I get uncertainty and these other things. So it is a threading a needle, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I didn't push it super hard, but if you're buying a company that there's like a license, or like there's somebody that is really material to the business. I think sellers would understand that, but in this case, there was no one person that was not replaceable. Now that I'm in the business, I think we have two people that would be a huge, one manages the relationship with our largest client and they really like him, and then somebody else who just has his tentacles in too many parts of the business. And so both of those people would be a big headache to have to replace, but certainly doable.
Got it.
Yeah. And then, I guess any other questions about the company before kind of talking about the LOI process?
Is it, when you say it's software service, is like programming or more like an IT network, that like what kind of?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so it's everything that we do can be done remotely. So we're not like an on-site managed services IT company. So we're not touching like computers and phones and networking in client offices. It's more building software for clients. But yeah, so all of our employees are remote, which was another thing I had to get comfortable with. But yeah, good question. I do think managed services is, I know there's a podcast specifically about that, and it's a more comfortable business model in the sense that the revenue is more recurring than project-based. The flip side is it's like very, your employees have to be you're kind of constrained to the market you're in. So it's like, you have to physically have a presence in the cities you service. Yeah, so when I was emailing back and forth with Andy, I'd sent over some potential topics to cover, and I'm going to kind of go through them in the order that was suggested. So the first one is kind of speed over perfection on LOIs, and I'll be the first to admit that I would fall into this category where, like the first LOI that I sent, I spent many weeks agonizing over it and putting together all kinds of spreadsheets and talking with industry experts and meeting with Rich at Acquira and kind of going through it. And I think early on, it's hard to frame an LOI as more of a start to serious diligence than a final commitment. So I think a lot of deals don't end up closing that are under LOI, and it's hard to really get into deal making until that's happened. So I guess just kind of embracing that, not allowing kind of analysis paralysis to delay sending them. And I think, it's actually much better to make a informed decision and move quickly and keep the momentum going. I think to do that, you have to be reviewing a lot of SIMs in general in order to move quickly. So like the more deals you see, I think the more comfortable you'll be making quicker decisions there. For me, I started the search really looking at basically it was only on financials. It was like any 500K plus SDE company in my metro. And so went and visited like a third-party shipping company and a commercial plumbing company, and after kind of doing those on sites and taking way too long to get those LOIs out, was able to kind of narrow the focus of the industry I wanted, which was this kind of software services space. And then because I was getting specific on industry, I had to compromise on geography and went national with the search. But I can kind of get into it, but I actually had a deal that was kind of in the, we were writing the purchase agreement and it ended up falling through because the owner told his, the person that kind of ran the chief operating officer told her he was selling it, and then she said she wanted to buy it, and pulled out, you know, kind of within weeks of closing. So that was very painful and also very motivating to just go very quickly. So for the deal I actually ended up closing on, like I think I found it and then sent an LOI within days, and then it took 6 months to negotiate, but just kept things moving as quickly as possible after that, just to kind of keep the momentum up in order to not only get myself out of searcher land, but also to actually close on the deal. So I think a lot of the data that you get in the data room after like signing a NDA is still, you know, presented in a pretty positive light. So like once you're under LOI and you just get more access to the sellers, you get more access to documents, you can do a quality of earnings. So yeah, I think once you just get that LOI in there at a reasonable price tied to EBITDA, makes sense to move forward. And I think sellers respond better to kind of decisive buyers putting a reasonable offer out there quickly than kind of nitpicking or agonizing before the LOI process. Then I also just think you learn way more negotiating deals than trying to find the perfect deal. So yeah, the learning process of going through the LOI process, you know, many times made me much better at it for the deal that I actually ended up closing on, and probably wouldn't have closed on this company had I not had those at-bats previously. And then I think just from like a pure financial perspective, there's a opportunity cost the longer you wait. You know, I'm not sure how many folks have some other day jobs or full-time searchers, but certainly if you're full-time, you know, every month you're searching, you're not realizing the SDE of the business you're going to acquire. So you're not growing that business, you're not becoming an expert in it. And I think there's potentially a psychological trap of like getting better at being a searcher and having your identity being a searcher, and really you're just trying to get to be an operator. And once you've closed, like all this kind of fades into the back of the memory. It took a while to kind of reload all this context in my mind and remember everything I went through kind of in preparation for this conversation, just because it, you know, it was a ton of work to learn everything and go through everything and acquire and read the books and listen to the podcast. But once you close, you have a whole new mountain to climb. So I think getting through this one, obviously you want to make an informed decision, but you know, you want to get to the kind of meat of the conversation sooner rather than later. And then something that I found helpful, I guess, after my LOI was accepted was, you know, at that point, once you're, you know, it's kind of your deal to win. I went and I was listening to podcasts on like how to grow this type of business, and found somebody that had kind of given a ton of tactical advice, and reached out to him on LinkedIn, and we hit it off and did some Zooms together. And I assumed he was going to be in Europe or something. He has an Irish accent, and randomly he actually lives in Portland, so we were able to get together in person. And he worked at kind of a competitive company, and so he was willing to kind of give me advice on the financials and what made sense and what didn't, and what to expect from growth. So I think once you're kind of in that, once you're under LOI, you can start to invest more time in kind of going deeper in that industry and doing that research. Yeah, so I guess to summarize, I'd say, you know, set yourself some decision-making window on the LOI side, like whether that's, you know, 48 to 72 hours, or, you know, some kind of time-bound number of days to send out your LOI to promising deals, and just kind of avoid over-engineering it pre-LOI. Yeah, so just focus on speed and simplicity there.
Did you have a certain criteria or like minimum level of boxes that needed to be checked before you would send an LOI, or what was your criteria to say this one's worth it, this one's not, and
Mhm.
within that shorter time frame?
Yeah, I would say I did. I'm trying to remember what they were. I think I had like a minimum SDE that I wanted it to make it worthwhile. I was also doing the search while I still had my full-time job and had have two little kids at home. So it was certainly a lot of, it was intense. There's a lot of, putting the kids down and working at night and working between meetings. So it was, I was eager to get out of that phase, but it needed to, like the SDE needed to be, enough to where it made sense to quit the corporate job. But yeah, then I wanted to, well, I guess that kind of transitions well to my next topic, which is why I picked a B2B software services company instead of a blue collar business, but or something in the trades, which some of the, a lot of the Acquira material was focused on, but I think it'd be generalized to really any industry. I had spent most of my career in working in kind of a tech bubble in San Francisco, so I had zero experience working with anyone in the trades or blue collar workers, and I had barely managed anybody, let alone like owning a P&L or operating a company. So I guess ultimately, once I narrowed my search, I wanted something where I didn't have to both learn like how to manage a team, how to run a company, how to operate a business, how to do the financial side of a company, while also having to like learn an industry from scratch. Like at least I ultimately chose something where I could speak the vernacular of the industry and kind of understood some of the services side while learning the business side of things. But yeah, I mean, I think it was, a company that I thought my skill set, either sales or technology or marketing, could impact the business on the growth side, and that, I think that the other boxes are just kind of the typical searcher things, like, the similar sort of stuff that the SBA looks at for. It's like customer concentration and, the type of kind of the quality of the revenue and the size of the business, like the market trends, like the CAGR of the industry, or I'm not sure how to pronounce that acronym, but yeah, is the industry growing or shrinking? That sort of stuff.
Did you early on, did you take like some of these deals through like the deal review process with the Acquira team?
Yeah.
And just got to a point where you felt comfortable enough and you stopped doing it, or did you continue doing it the whole time?
I took it there several times, and then that was it. I was able to then kind of ask myself some of those questions. I listened to the Acquiring Minds podcast. I don't know if you guys know that one, but went through a lot of those. So I think between reading kind of the main two books, the Buy Then Build, and then the Harvard Business Review book, and listening to a ton of podcasts where you get to hear a ton of people's stories, and then going through the Acquira deal review process, I think a combination of those things, you start to kind of build up somewhat of an intuition for it. But I still think I brought almost everything to Acquira, or at least sent over, some of the material, kind of fill out a few of the slides on the deal. But yeah, I think again though, it's just until you're under LOI with the company, it's you have kind of imperfect information, and the deal's not really moving anywhere. Yeah, I guess maybe for everyone in the room here, are folks open to kind of all industries, or narrowed industry or geography, or are most people going for trades businesses, or just kind of all different types of industries.
I'm more geography based right now, but
Mhm.
just kind of at the beginning of my search too, so it might change.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I certainly started with that, and would have, probably preferred that, all things being equal, but ended up putting more weight on having familiarity. But I've certainly been in your seat where people have bought an HVAC or plumbing company with no background in it, and were able to learn that in 6 months and seem pretty competent in it by the time they were coming back through and talking about it. So it certainly is something that's doable. I just felt like I had a more probability of success leaning on my background selling software and writing software, but I don't think. But on the flip side, it's like I'm not in the office all day every day with these people, so it's harder to manage folks remote, I think. With my business model, it's a little easier because most of the employees bill hourly. So, there's kind of that backstop to people executing on their work. Like, clients give feedback on quality, and then, people have utilization targets to hit. So you kind of know how many, right? I look at a spreadsheet every month of how many hours everyone billed, and then for the non-billable employees, they generally have quotas. So there's, some, I guess in both cases, kind of objective numerical numbers for performance.
Jeff, we had some question here in the chat. Quinn mentioned that he'd be curious about your deal team, and then a man
Mhm.
was asking, where did you search for SW services based company?
Yeah, I can't remember where I found the first one that kind of opened where I first kind of went deep on this industry, and then decided to kind of change my search for it. But it might have even been on Biz by Sell. But once I knew the industry I was going after, I literally just like Googled like software services companies for sale, and then ended up on a bunch of different platforms that I hadn't heard of, and some were kind of more tiered towards this type of business. And then the brokers that sold this company, I posted it on there. So I found this particular company just through Google, but like over time I ended up on a ton of email lists for a ton of different brokers. Yeah, I still have an email. I still have a different kind of Gmail domain that I put together for this search, and a little website, and still get many emails a day on that, in that inbox for companies like this and all kinds of companies. So yeah, if I at some point I am going to maybe circle back, and I do kind of browse them inactively to see if it would make sense to grow through acquisition, just because you get kind of at a certain size, like EBITDA arbitrage, where this is like a four, maybe in the previous 12 months they've done like 4.2 million in revenue, and we're kind of on track for 5 million in revenue right now. And so if I bought another one and combined it together, all of a sudden I'm 8 million, and I can pay this, theoretically the same multiple, and then once those integrate, might be able to remove some of the operating overhead, and then the multiple might tick up, because it kind of gets you into the next kind of size for EBITDA multiples. Once you get to that kind of like, I don't know, $2 million EBITDA range, you kind of get into the small private equity radar to potentially get a higher multiple. But good question. Oh yeah, and then for the deal team, I think Eric at Real Clear Law, I think was the name of the attorney. And then let's see here. I used Matthias, who as kind of a lone broker. He's active on Twitter. And then Tree Walk was the name of the QOE firm. And they were like half the price of everyone else I looked up. And both Eric at Real Clear Law and TrueWalk gave me some, I don't know if it was like 50%. They gave me like some of my deal costs for the deal that fell through, and they rolled that into the next deal.
Jeff, what was it like working with Matthias? Because I actually had an intro call with him a couple of days ago. Did you find value in that beyond building your own banking relationships independently?
I did, yes, definitely, because he knew the SBA process better than the loan broker, and you know, I can't, it can't be 100% objective who he recommends you to, because like he's obviously getting paid from the bank, but like a referral fee of some sort, but he was able to provide answer all my questions, about the different structures I could try to do, because we had to get creative, because one of the sellers wanted to stay on, he needed to retain a little bit of equity, and then like how do we position this with the bank, and all sorts of, if you start to get into kind of weird corners of SBA land, he was very helpful. And then he was also able to recommend a bank that was good for this type of deal. And, he was on all the calls with the bank, and was there, through the closing calls. And yeah, I found him very helpful to have on the team.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He was both kind of a good, let you know what was coming, and then also like very tactically helpful and way more responsive. Like the loan broker wouldn't respond for a while, then he would ping the email thread and make sure that the loan broker was on top of things.
How's that transition gone so far with the seller? I'm assuming he's still on board.
Yeah.
Like when you started to.
Yeah.
How was day one, and then how's the transition kind of gone?
It was. I think it's gone well. We tried. Once we were under LOI, we had a weekly call, and so. But yeah, the two sellers were in Buffalo. But yeah, so we'd have a weekly Zoom call. Talk about whatever quality of earnings thing would come back, or if I needed some other documents that they hadn't provided, they'd pull different things together, revenue by customer over time, like any sort of report I wanted, or anything from QuickBooks, they'd pull that. And we kind of built up a relationship. I present, to help win the deal, I kind of presented my vision for the company and how to grow it. I did like a little kind of PowerPoint and almost mini business plan for them. And I think they ultimately chose me because I wasn't necessarily the highest offer, but I guess it at least developed enough trust that I was going to take care of the employees in the business the most and not chop it up, and that I was, competent to run and grow it. So yeah, it was kind of a leap of faith though. So I still had my day job, took PTO, flew out to Buffalo to meet everyone on day one, and but yeah, went well. One seller kind of like disappeared immediately, and then the other seller has stuck around and has been very helpful. He's certainly overpriced. He basically in the sim had said he wanted $250K a year, so we turned that into an hourly rate, and I'm slowly ramping him off right now. He's still doing a day or two a week, but yeah, it was helpful, and I think because it was my first acquisition, and obviously a ton of potential downside of things going sideways, it felt worth it to kind of pay to have him stay on, and make sure that the clients felt comfortable with the change of ownership, and it felt seamless for, I guess, both clients and key people, because the people kind of are our product, and the reoccurring projects with the client base is all the revenue. But I think things are good relationship there.
Jeff, you may have said this earlier, but since you kept the owner on at a salary, how was that baked into the deal to protect you from him just deciding to leave early and say, hey, I made enough off the sale, or if things went bad between the two of you, and he no longer wanted to stay on? Like, was that built into the structure of the deal?
Well, I guess I somewhat trusted that he did want to. I guess my perception going into it was that he wanted to stay on, more than I wanted him to stay on, at least in terms of time. And so, and that had been very consistent. But I don't know if there was a monetary penalty in the agreement, but it was in the contract. So yeah, I guess it would have been like a breach of the purchase agreement if you just disappeared on day one, which can happen. Like I had kind of a side. My financial advisor had originally mentioned ETA to me, and that's how it kind of got in my mind. And so I had put together kind of a mastermind of other people, that other clients of his, and we'd have monthly calls, and they bought a fire. One of the couples brought a fire suppression company, and that kind of happened to them, where like things were somewhat misrepresented, and then the seller kind of just ghosted them to some degree afterwards. So I guess that can happen.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I've actually touched on some of these other topics I was going to talk about, but yeah, I'm not sure if anyone else has thoughts on the remote workforce. I mean, there's tons of like remote user guides, and like there's a lot of literature out there post-COVID on how to, I guess, both empower and manage remote employees in terms of like cultural practices and tools, and having people feel somewhat connected, and being able to get work done remotely. But yeah, it's probably harder, at least psychologically, to have people out in the ether and not kind of, you're in there, making relationships with new employees through in-person interaction and kind of water cooler time versus more formal interaction over Zoom.
Are they all pretty geographically dispersed, or are they kind of concentrated but just working remotely?
Yeah, good question. I'd say like half the employees are kind of in the upstate New York, Buffalo region. And so when I go out there, I'm able to see a lot of people, and I fly up there like once a quarter to see employees and clients. And then, I would say maybe similar ratio of clients in that general area. And then the rest of the employees and clients are kind of spread around the country. So yeah, I ended up the guy who advised me, who kind of ran a go-to-market team here in Portland, he ended up leaving that job and joining me here. So I do have one person I get in the same room with here, which is nice, and he runs the sales team. But yeah, most people are kind of in that upstate New York area, or at least half the people.
How long has the company been a remote-based company? Is it kind of a long-term thing?
Just since COVID, like people moved around, and for whatever reason there was no effort to like claw people back. So when I got the company, there was a big office in Buffalo, but the lease was ending at the end of 2024. I closed July 1st, 2024, and the lease was not in the purchase agreement, so I didn't have to pay the rent at all. And then it just went, no one was in, like one guy would come into the office one day a week, basically. So I think people may get together occasionally, but yeah, for the most part, everything's just remote, even for the people that are in the same area. So yeah, it's probably somewhat business model dependent, and just kind of the type of employees you have. All our employees are, sit behind a computer all day and to actually do the work, and I think most folks kind of fall into what you would think of as stereotypical developer personality, and more introverted, and probably appreciate not having a whole lot of in-office meetings. It seems, I guess, the fact that only one person wanted to go into the office after COVID kind of speaks to that.
Right. Have you made any big changes yet as far as like operational efficiencies, or any any of the things you had identified as, potential?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're certainly chipping away at it. There was really no like company goals. It's like, let's just do good. There was no objectives or anything like that. So I implemented. Let's see here. Like I read the Traction book. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, like the EOS entrepreneurial operating system. Anyway, I didn't pay for an implementer. It's like $40K and a lot of effort to implement that. So I haven't done that yet, but read the books and kind of implemented that framework. And so we now have like company objectives, and then there's quarterly goals that roll up into those kind of company OKRs, and those are assigned out to different people. I was working at Asana for 8 years prior to joining or acquiring ETG, and so we put everything in Asana, and so now there's kind of like a place to track work besides in email and chat. So we have that. So yes, we've got the goals framework and a place to actually track work, and then we implemented. I think the biggest change has kind of been on the sales side. So we actually have, I would say more modern outbound sales. We have some account executives that have experience closing deals, and we've seen traction there. We've brought in some more clients. I have revenue objectives and everything, but my main goal is to get like 2 more large clients, so that the kind of ebbs and flows of the project work between those clients is smoothed out. And if we lose one, it's not going to be as big of a deal. So we signed up a couple clients that are large enough to fill that, and then we're kind of slowly growing the revenue of those clients, and then set up now like a Asana services partner, so that they send us integration work. So yeah, we have some partnerships set up. We have some operational changes. We have some go-to-market changes. So yeah, that was kind of the main things I had wanted to do in the first year. So so July 1st would have been 1 year after closing. So yeah, I think I sent it for Acquira in spring of 23. And then went through the coursework, got very close to closing on one deal that fell through at the end, and then took about 6 months to close on the one that I ended up getting.
Yeah, I believe, Jeff, you presented this business to the deal review team or the investment committee during that time, back in 2024, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I would like to just also take this time for our current accelerators not to wait for LOI or wanting to execute one. It would be best for you to present a deal to our deal review team. It's a chance to sharpen your thinking, spot blind spots, and gain confidence with support and behind you, right? You don't need the perfect deal to present. Just let us know. We'll have that one scheduled, or if you can find any time, feel free to let me know as well, so at least we can check if we can carve out some time and schedule it for you. All right.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess the one topic that I didn't get to, or that didn't touch on as much, is like, I guess I would encourage folks to have some sort of healthy emotional outlet for the stress, because I would say it is like ETA is fairly stressful to go through the selling your family and friends on the idea, and then having like a fairly massive debt to service and payroll, and it's a fairly taxing process. And so whether that's exercise or having other people, other ETF folks you can talk with, it's I would say it's way more rewarding and exciting than my kind of W-2 day job. But there are stresses that did not exist where you could just kind of turn things off at the end of the day and turn your brain off.
Speaking of W-2 day job, how did you make that transition? At what point did you decide to leave that behind? Was it?
So yeah, I quit after I'd signed my deal. So I was like working, which was also its own stressor, I guess. But I was working through the process. I'm not sure that I would necessarily recommend that, but yeah, that's the path that I went. But yeah, so I would say like, yeah, getting comfortable with kind of moving forward under ambiguity, like embracing sales. Like if you haven't done sales professionally, like this entire process is kind of sales. You got to sell yourself to the seller, build that relationship, and take that to close. And you got to sell your family and friends, and then sell the new employees on sticking around and the clients, and then you're brought in to, even if you're not the salesperson at your company, you're going to be doing sales somewhat indirectly, talking to prospects and helping people up the line. So yeah, I'd say, yeah, getting comfortable with kind of making decisions without perfect information, and then getting comfortable with the sales process is important for success. Any other questions from folks? I don't have a hard stop, but I think this is scheduled to end here at the top of the hour.
Yep. Any last minute question to Jeff? Thank you so much, Jeff, for giving us your time and sharing your experience as well. That really means a lot. It's valuable to our current AEs who's in the search phase. So yeah, we really appreciate it. I'll share Jeff's contact. Oh, there we go. He sent his email there. If you would like to connect, feel free to send him an email. I'll also share his email. Feel free to remind me later on.
Well, yeah, well, great to chat with you guys.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks
you.
again, Jeff.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.